We can delete the data after certain time at the container level as blob level also. We can delete at certain time at the container level as blob level also. I didn't really follow the question, but if you're asking that if you want to delete the container after those 720 days, yes you can, provided you don't have any blobs inside it. Until the period that you have a blob inside it, you cannot delete the container. But if you do not have any blob inside that, then you can go ahead, delete your entire container and then delete the entire storage out there after the time period is done. Yes, any more questions here?
Kiran,
Kiran,
coming to the shared access tokens,
Okay,
there is another option, user delegation key.
correct. So if I go
In that,
into something called shared access signature out here, uh, okay, where do you see that? Can you please let me know? There's something called in the container level, is it? Let's go to the containers
the
out here.
container level.
Correct. Set this container out here. And in the container level, if I go into something called shared access tokens, there is also something called user delegation key as such. So what you can do here is that when you give a user delegation key, you can create the, let's say, the keys out here. You can give the keys, but only to people who are there in your RBAC, or only the people who are there in your tenant. If there is someone who's not a part of your tenant, even though you create this key and give it to them, they won't be able to access this out. A safer way to do it, but usually we go ahead to do the account keys as such, because we don't really want to add people in our tenant out there just to go ahead and access the data as such. So if you have a condition where all the users that you are sharing the data with are inside a part of your tenant and have an RBAC, at least read RBAC out there, only they will go, or only they can go ahead and, let's say, look at your data out there as such. That's a user delegation key. Again, acts as the same SAS key, but you will need an RBAC additionally to go ahead and access your storage account as such. Someone else had a question, I'm sorry.
me only.
Good, please.
Second, why I'm create like while I'm creating the immutable storage policy, I have seen like allow protected append rights too. So should
Correct.
have two options, none and append blobs. What does
Mhm,
this mean?
mhm. So do you know, or do you just recollect, in our sessions
Okay.
there is something called append blobs, page blobs, and blob blobs? We saw append, or we just spoke about something called append blobs, and I said that append blobs is for log data, meaning
Yeah.
applications can go ahead and send their logs across. So
Yeah.
what does this do is that if you go ahead and say append blobs, allow protected append rights, what will happen is that blobs that are a type of append blobs can, I mean blobs or data that is a type of append blobs in the form of text, log files, and etc. That particular data can be overridden, meaning applications can go ahead and write additional data, additional log information into those blobs but cannot delete it out. But for a
Okay.
normal blob, which is blob, once you upload it, apply a retention policy, you cannot append it, meaning you cannot add multiple things into it, or you cannot delete it and all these things out. But for append blobs, you need additional rights out there, because applications would, want to, let's say, go ahead and write things out to your blobs out there. And when application writes something, that blobs will become something known as append in nature. So you are okay to go ahead and allow additional rights, meaning though it is a worm which is write once read many, you are now allowing just some protected rights, meaning over HTTPS connections to those particular append blobs out here. That is what allow protected append means out there as such. Yes, any more questions here? Again, what I normally do on a Friday after we cover good amount of concepts out here is that I don't really go into a new concept as such. Rather, I go ahead and do a quick revision, take a lot of questions. That's what I'm doing if you observe since this morning. And I would also like to go ahead and do a quick recap of whatever topics that we have covered. and let's see if we have any questions on those topics, and let's see what we can, let's say, get out of those topics out there and etc. Again, we started with the tenant. We didn't do much in the tenant. We said how to add users out here and etc. So adding, deleting users and etc. is what we did at the tenant level. Then we said subscriptions, and we said multiple kinds of subscriptions like pay as you go, free trial, and all these things out. And then we were discussing about the RBACs, owner, reader, and contributor roles. And contributor roles out here. And we were also experimenting that, okay, fine, if I give an owner role, what will happen? If I give a reader role, what will happen? If I have an owner and a contributor, or a reader and a contributor, then what's going to happen? So we are talking about all these levels of, let's say, permissions out there. And after that, we came down to something called as resource groups. And in the resource groups, we were telling things like, what is a resource group? How do you create a resource group? What is the location of a resource group? What is the name of the resource group, and etc. And then we are telling that resource group is nothing but a simple folder structure. It's a simple folder inside your storage account, wherein you can go ahead, let's say, add multiple things or add multiple resources. And that's where we came down to a resource called storage account. And under the storage account, we said multiple things like, what is the naming convention of the storage account? And what do you understand, or what do you, let's say, a convention of a storage account? Then we said, what do you mean by the performance of a storage account? Like what is standard, what is premium, etc. And finally, we also said, what is the criteria to select a location? And then I also said that, you know what, you cannot change all these properties after you create the storage account as such. And then we were very importantly talking about something called as replications, wherein we learned about something like LRS, ZRS, GRS, GZRS, Geo Zone Redundant Storage, and also seeing how do you go ahead and change those using the configuration section of the storage. And then we were, let's say, looking at something called containers, and we're talking about blob containers out here. And we're talking about one specific container called blob containers, wherein we went ahead, added data, and then after adding data, we were understanding how to access a blob by using SAS versus how to access the entire container by using SAS. And the Microsoft Storage Explorer. And then we were saying, how do I generate an SAS at a storage account level? And then we are talking about, what do you mean by access keys? And what is the difference between access keys and storage account, access keys and shared access signatures? And why do you have a key 1 and a key 2? This is something that we are discussing today. And then we were looking at life cycle management policies. And we were understanding what is a life cycle management, why do you need a life cycle management, and etc. And then today we are looking at access policies as such. And what do you mean by access policy? How do you apply an access policy? What happens when you apply an access policy? And what is the time-based retention out here, and etc. So these are the concepts that we have covered so far in our curriculum on what is storages and how do you access and all these things out here. So any questions with anything as such, like starting from the basic as tenant level, as less as tenant level, or today's concept, which is access keys out there or access policies out there. Anyone who's missing anything, anyone who just needs, let's say, a quick recap of what let's say a particular topic means and all these things out here. Anyone? Any questions still here that I can take?
Sir,
Go please.
hello. Sir,
Go ahead, please.
access a blob essays. Can you repeat it once, sir? Shortcut form.
Access a blob using the SAS. Again, I'll just go there,
Yes.
upload a blob out here. So my container right now is in an access level called private, no anonymous
Yeah.
access. So if I go ahead and upload a blob out here, let me go ahead and look at my data, and let me see, I have a couple of data out here. So I can go ahead and upload a simple blob out here to make things very simple. And once I upload a blob, it's sitting in hot. And if I want to access this out, I can click on this particular blob, and if I take the URL directly and paste it in my browser, I'll simply get an error telling that, the data is not existing and all that stuff, because the container is in a private level, for which I said that I need to generate something called as an SAS at a blob level. And I can go ahead and generate this out. And if I take this particular URL, go into my browser, should be able to access the data out here in a secured way. So this is accessing the blob using an SAS out here.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Yes, any more questions still here, guys? Okay, let's see the chat window. Deletion of the tenant happens where? Deletion of the tenant happens at the tenant level only. So if you go into the tenant, deletion of the tenant only happens at the tenant level, and I don't see the delete button out here because I have active subscriptions under my account. And if you want to delete the tenant, you'll have to deactivate the account. The entire account has to be deactivated as such. Yes, any more questions here?
We got the tenant ID after creating subscription or before we get the tenant ID after login
See,
to
you
Azure
get a
portal.
tenant ID before the subscription only. Before you actually go ahead and create a subscription, you actually get a tenant ID out there. But for some reason, these days when you just go ahead create a tenant, Microsoft is giving some issues out there. So that's the reason I'm suggesting users to first go ahead and create, let's say, or first go ahead and let's say create the subscription, and then you then you can see your tenant and all these things out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, will you explain briefly this week's important topics? Whatever we discuss is important out there. So whatever that we discussed entirely are important topics only. Again, to make sure that I give you the additional content, what I can do for that is this, where I was coming down to, is that let's go through the interview questions for this specific topic out here. In the interview question section, there is something called storage accounts out here, and I'll share this link with you all. Please bookmark this out, please save this out somewhere. And this is a public link. You can just click on this one and you should be able to see all the interview questions out here. And this has now we have done with the topics. This has all the interview questions that we are discussing till now, apart from something like networking and etc., which you can ignore. Telling like what is the different replication tiers, what do you mean by lifecycle management policy, and there are scenario based questions. So if you go through it, not only go through it, for example, what do you know about the naming convention, and can you create a containers inside and all that stuff. If you go through it, I have given the answer here on what exactly that you need to talk about in an interview, and also the related articles to it. What is the naming convention, what is the naming rules and let's say restrictions for let's say a container, for let's say a storage account, and all these things out here. So so I want you all to let's say look at this particular questions, and not only the questions, the links that are pasted along with these questions. Again, if you look at this one, I'm not only pasting Microsoft links, I'm also going in and pasting external links also, which will tell you what exactly is the difference between a shared access signature, the access token, what is this, and all that stuff. So if you just scroll down, there's something called firewall and all these things out, which firewall topics and all we do not cover. We'll cover it in let's say in the coming classes. But hot, cool, and all these concepts out there, this is something that I've added here about lifecycle management policy rules. And if you click on this one, you'll go to a link on what is blob lifecycle management policy, how do you apply this out, and all these things out here as such. So I want you all to let's say analyze these questions out here. Please save these links and just go through the storage account section of it. I have again PaaS, SaaS, Devops, and all that stuff, which we'll be covering, let's say, as the class progresses. But I want you all to just say, let's look at, or just look at the storage account for now, and look at the topics that we covered till now. Go through the topics that we've covered till now, and the coming classes from Monday is going to be on automation. Now, for automation, I would need good amount of solid 1.5 week out here. You can also take it 2 weeks as such, wherein we'll be looking into something called PowerShell and ARM templates. So until now, we've been creating all these things on the portal. What if I want to automate it? What if I want to come through via a script and want to create this out? And from Monday, we'll be doing something called automation out here. Yes, any questions still here?
Sir, can you please repeat lock policy at container level and storage level?
Sorry, the blob policy, or I didn't get it. Can you come again with the question, please?
In access policies,
Hmm.
lock blob and something is there, right? Can you repeat that one? In access policy.
When you say in access policy, let's go back into our storage account. So you mean this one, access policy? This one you mean?
No, no, no. We lock the. You told that we cannot lock
No,
the
that's what this
blobs.
is. This is what it is, right? To lock and all that stuff.
Yeah, okay. This one.
Immutability. Yes, there's someone else had a question. I'll cover that out. And can you undo a deleted storage account? No, you cannot. Storage account once deleted cannot be recovered back again. You cannot undo a particular storage account out here. Again, access policies topic. Can you repeat shortly? Definitely yes. Access policies are there in place to retain your data. When I say retain your data, to protect your data from accidental deletes and also accidental writes. If I want to apply this out, I go down into something called access policies out here, and I add something called as an immutable blob storage. Again, you can read about immutable blob storage out here on what do you really mean by immutability. Again, same documentation that comes across. And what do you mean by immutability and what kind of immutability is getting applied in all these things out. And in here, I can say add a policy, and I can say time-based retention, and I can give a time like 365, 720, whatever it is. I can save this out, and I apply something called as a lock. The state of the lock is unlocked out here. You can click on these three dots. Please don't click on this button, but if you are working in a real-time environment, if your organization is okay with that, just click on this lock policy out there so that the state can be changed into something known as locked. Once it is locked, you cannot unlock this out. And if you have the policy set, you cannot delete your container if there is a blob inside it on which you have applied a policy as such. Neither you
So
can delete your
once,
storage account out there. Just a second, just a second. Don't please do not interrupt while I'm, let's say, doing this. So you cannot delete your, let's say, storage account, or you cannot delete your container as such out there when you apply a particular policy. Yes. Someone else had a question.
so
Sorry.
once we are like once we have given this policy, so that we cannot able to add or delete any blobs, right?
Correct. You cannot add or delete any blobs as such.
Like they will use only for the past data only, like which is not use like we cannot use regularly for that data only. It's usable,
Correct.
right?
Correct. For the data that you want to retain for a longer period of time. Again, if the policy is unlocked, I can also delete this out. I can remove the policy as well. So it is for the data which you want to protect, which you do not want to, let's say, someone go ahead and just write this out and etc. Okay, I'm missing some basic point. Okay, we cannot add or delete. Can we copy or move in the container? You can copy the blobs from the container which is locked to a container which is unlocked, but you cannot copy a blob from a container which is unlocked to a container which is locked out there. So once a container is locked, you cannot do operations like append and delete out there as such. Okay, missing a basic point out here about storage explorer.exe. Why is it used, and what is the difference between storage explorer and Azure browser account? Stor- storage explorer. For a storage explorer, I don't have to be a part of my tenant. If I am a role called data engineer, why do you think should I go ahead and log into my Azure tenant, go to the resource group, go into the storage account, and then get, let's say, go ahead and let's say work with the containers out there? I don't have to do all these things. I just have to install a software which will allow me to manage my data in a better way using the access keys and the access policy. And why not the Azure browser account? Because if you want to go ahead into and browse that particular storage account on Azure, you have to have a particular role based access control policy out there, which I don't want to give it to everyone. Reason being, I have a storage account explorer to bypass all these things and directly interact with my data. That is the storage explorer as such. Yes, any more questions here? Anyone, any more questions? Any more questions that I can answer?
Then can you please tell about MSC in access the container?
Sorry, MS.
MSC,
I
yeah,
didn't
sales
get
and
you. What is
MSC. So we
yes
have on the
sales?
access container, yes.
Hmm.
SS and
So
MSC is something like access the container.
when you say
Okay.
MSC, MSC
Yes.
is called Microsoft Storage Explorer.
So it's not such an access thing. Like I missed it topic.
No, it is a Storage Explorer. I just gave a short form for Microsoft Storage Explorer as MSC.
Okay, it's not like SAS.
No, it's not like an SAS. It's a software in which you can go ahead use an
Okay, okay,
SAS. No,
okay.
it's not like an
Yes,
SAS based.
okay, okay. We are taking that flops and we are giving the storage to it.
Exactly, to the storage
Yeah,
room.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, yeah.
So MSC is nothing but Storage Explorer as such. I just gave a short form there. As an admin, where can I see the users who are under the resource group level and who are under the container level? Just go to the use. Can you repeat the lifecycle management briefly? I'll definitely do that. Just give me a second. So if I go under a resource group, just go under here and just say entity and access management. As an administrator, I can just go ahead and see what are all the role assignments that someone has on this particular subscription or this particular resource group level as such. So for example, random user is a contributor at a subscription. I am a user who's an owner at a subscription and all these things out. So any level, just go ahead and hit this particular access control. Come down to something called role assignments. In that, you'll be able to see all the users that are added under a subscription or under a resource group, under a container. You can go ahead, just do the same thing out there as such. Can you repeat lifecycle management policies in a very brief way? Definitely, I can do that. So if you go inside a storage account, and if you want to manage the lifecycle of your data, when I say manage the lifecycle of your data, just means that do you want your data to be sitting in hot, cool, whatever it is, for which you don't have to manually come through and apply rules or manually come through and change the, let's say, format of the data. You can add a rule out here, give a name of a rule telling that, let's say, delete after 30, something like this, some name, and you can give a condition that if the blob is older than 30 days, please delete this out, and you can add this out. So what really happens out here is that it goes into the containers, checks out for all the blobs that are older than 30 days, identifies them, and goes ahead and deletes it out, or changes it to, let's say, cool, or changes it to archive, whatever rule that you apply out there. So lifecycle management policies are nothing but rules that manage the lifecycle or that manage the existence of your storage account. Meaning, do you want to, let's say, delete it? Do you want to, let's say, change it to cool, or do you want to, let's say, change it to archive? And you want all these things to be done without any human intervention out there, which is, let's say, one form of an automation as such out there. Yes, any more questions here that I can take? Anyone, any more questions that I can take till here? So just go through these topics, guys, and please use that particular interview question link that I have given to just understand what exactly it is, and just go through that particular, let's say, concepts out there. Just revise those questions out there, which will definitely help you while you're coming or while you're going ahead and facing an interview out there as such. And from Monday, we'll be starting with the automation part of our syllabus. So I'll go as slow as possible. I'll repeat it again and again until people get it right. I do understand that some of y'all might not be from an automation background, might not be, let's say, from IT IT background as such, which is super fine. Which is super fine to, let's say, grasp this particular data. So not a problem. We'll just go one at a time, one step at a time to understand what automation is, and we'll try to repeat the same thing out there. And we'll take a lot of assignments as such. But for this week, please go through these topics. And if you want, I'll just go ahead and paste this out here if that is possible. I'm not sure if this. Yes, I think this is possible. So I've just pasted all these things out here on what we have done over a period of time. And please go through these documentations over the weekend, and we'll meet on Monday and we'll start discussing about automation as such. Until then, have a great weekend ahead, guys. Thank you and have a good day ahead.